All right, everyone. I'm Rich. I'm here with Messari Protocol Services. Obviously, we're here to talk about investing in AI. Let's do a quick intro with everyone, and we'll kick it off.
Yes, hello everyone. Tom David from iExec. Blockchain Foundation specializes in data privacy and especially in AI use case. I manage all ecosystem support and effort, including grants, ecosystem funds, and investment in early stage projects, especially in AI and DeepMind. Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm Matt. I'm one of the partners and Chief Commercial Officer at Outlier Ventures. We been around for 11 years, invested in over 370 early stage companies and projects during that time. A big focus of ours has been on AI and AI agents. Actually, we were involved in the setting up of Fetch AI back in 2016, and have been working with the ASI Alliance ever since. They sort of put together, working with Ocean and various others, and a big focus of ours over the last couple of years with our accelerator programs has been crypto AI, and now sort of agents. We've written a number of papers recently about what we call the post-web, which is this idea that the internet in the future will be primarily something that's used by machines, not by people.
Hey everyone, my name is Rakesh Gidwani, and I'm an investor at Protagonist. I'm a venture partner there. And then I'm also a co-founder and CTO at ION. So as an investor, I primarily focus on Web3, AI, anything at the intersection of Web3 and AI, and very interested in the AI agent space as it is evolving. And then as a co-founder, I am focused on building a decentralized AI compute cloud built for the enterprise.
All right, guys. So with this in mind, I mean, we're talking about concepts, applications, protocols that are existing in terms of weeks, months, not years, not decades. What kind of criteria are you using to evaluate agentic startups in a space like that?
Yes, can begin. Yes, as an investor, we mostly look for combinations of AI capabilities and Web3 native designs. We firstly look, we want to see clear use case. AI agents should solve problems and not just mix AI and blockchain for the hype and to put AI on the pitch deck as a buzzword. We look at execution. Is the products live? Can on-chain agents manage on-chain funds? And one important thing for me is the team. So we also pay close attention to the team, because in this type of days, building huge AI projects requires a deep knowledge on AI, but also on crypto infrastructure. So a good project needs to have this type of skills and knowledge on the team. And lastly, we care about safety and governances, because for me, a lot of AI agents are gaining more traction and can control a lot of funds on chains. So how it's controlled, is there any fallback mechanisms, some stuff like that? It's important for us, yeah.
I think it's good thoughts there. One thing I'd say is, you need to look at what's the same and what's different, right? Because what's the same across all sort of early stage or anyone who's trying to get anything done, right? Is you need a team that's highly aligned. You need a sort of an idea, something that you can verify and validate in the time that you have available and the resources that you have, right? That's all the same. That's all important, I think. But then what's different, right? So in my view, we're entering another kind of like fundamental infrastructure phase, right? And so, in the same way that blockchains, unlocked a different kind of, financial opportunity that, took, frankly, 10 plus years to cook up properly, right? We're now entering another one of those that's sort of building on the basis of all of that. So I think, we're really interested in, like, what are those foundational elements that are going to make a difference, and how are you kind of keeping it simple enough to do something that's actually going to work?
Yep, a lot of that makes sense, and like I agree with everything that you said on everything that's the same for any startup. For me, when it comes to AI agent-based startups, I look at how the team is thinking about building the knowledge base for their AI agents, right? Because the data that the agents get access to will sort of in the end drive how the agent performs or what the agent is capable of. So that's one aspect I look at. And then the other aspect on the other side I look at is what are the capabilities that the agent will have, right? So in terms of what would it be able to do when something is triggered? And then how does it interact with either other agents or humans so that it can actually perform some valuable work, meaningful work? So look at some of those factors before making an investment.
Maybe I could jump back in there because I think that's a really interesting point. And I think in any sort of like emerging market, I think you have kind of infrastructures, you have kind of connectors, and then you have applications, right? And sort of what we're doing here is sort of building all of that at the same time. And your kind of risks as a builder and for us as a kind of a supporter or an enabler of that is that, people who build infrastructures, create very elegant solutions for problems that don't exist. And then they fail. And then people who build applications, have great ideas about things that might work, but the infrastructure is not there to support it, and maybe the connecting points aren't in place to enable any of that stuff to happen yet. So that's kind of what I mean when I say kind of how do you keep it simple enough to sort of think about what do we need in the market right now and how can we build that next.
Yes, and to add a little word about that, with the development of the vibe coding in AI, for me, and in my opinion, the safety is going to be the biggest issue in the coming months and years about the AI projects, because a lot of AI agents are gaining more and more autonomy and more controls over real values, and we need to be extra careful about that. And it's why security audit, sandbox testing, and oversight mechanism will be more essential in the due diligence. Yeah.
And just for some added baseline here, I think this might be important. How long have you guys been evaluating in this space of specific to decentralized AI in different parts of the stack?
So I've been doing this for over 2 years.
So yeah, I worked with Hermione and Toby, the founders of Fetch.io, back in 2015, and I had quite a long and complicated conversation about what agents even were, and like it was sort of it was a mind-blowing and sort of ridiculous concept at the time that we sort of, where it was a sort of in the future when everything's different, this sort of thing will be possible. And sort of now, I guess nearly 10 years later, it's really beautiful to see it sort of starting to come together. So yeah, but to answer your question directly, like I guess we made a number of investments based on our original kind of convergence thesis back in the day. Very few of those actually worked because I think we had mistimed it. But then we ran 2 crypto AI accelerator programs, invested in about 20 companies last year, and we've done 2 more this year so far. So yeah, we're quite exposed / invested in the space.
Yeah, on my side, I'm at iExec since a year and a half, and we just launched some stuff to support more the builders in this ecosystem. We just launched an ecosystem fund specialized in AI projects, and mostly AI, but also DeepMind. And we will launch some cohorts specialized in AI or some specific stuff in AI. So we are really targeting the new trend and new projects on AI, because there is a lot of specific trends into the AI in general. So we want to explore more and more projects in this field. Yeah.
Nice, appreciate that, guys. So let's move on to this next question here. How are decentralized compute networks and modular agentic frameworks influencing scalability and performance of autonomous systems today?
For me, decentralized computer networks and modular frameworks are making it faster to develop AI agents by removing centralized systems like Google and OpenAI, but also simplifying how AI agents are built. Because with blockchains, AI agents, with blockchain allow AI agents to run a task in a distributed way, which supports like openness and resiliency. And modular frameworks allow agents to develop and update data by plug-and-play components. But I think there are a lot of challenges, and I think we will talk about that more later. But yeah.
Yeah, I think the promise of it is really, really interesting. This idea that you can kind of create relatively simple programs that unlock and enable sort of autonomous systems, right? And those together creating a sort of an emergent property, which is organization, rather than the top-down one. And I think that's obviously quite appealing to people who are interested in decentralization as an idea. So I think as a concept, it's really good. I think when you look at, this kind of essentially gold rush that we're looking at around sort of how can we build, who can build the sort of like the fundamental building blocks that sort of like then will be connected together. I think we're kind of, obviously a bit of a way off from moving out of kind of research projects into MVP, into something that's production ready for like ordinary users.
So for me, I started building ION because I strongly believe, for these autonomous AI agents to work, they should be built on decentralized network, because without that, they are not truly autonomous, right? Because the centralized entity can shut down those agents at any point in time. So that's, I think, in my opinion, the foundational requirement. And then when it comes to the frameworks sort of make it easy for developers to sort of focus on the modules that they want to build, and then plug in some of the other modules that they might want to use. For example, if they want to use some external data sources, they can just plug in some of the modules that already exist. That way, it just makes it very easy for developers to build these agent networks. And then it also, building in the modular way, enables you to just specialize in one specific area and not necessarily just focus on building every single piece of the puzzle.
Let's talk about limitation and challenges, because as I think we are also still we have still some limitations. Running AI agents on tasks with the blockchain can be more slower and more expensive than centralized system, and coordinating also multiple AI tasks across some network and ecosystem can be very hard and isn't always smooth. So I think it will be the main challenge in the next few years.
Yeah, for sure. You definitely have the kind of crypto category challenges, right? Around sort of fragmentation and sort of all the things that come from how you coordinate across, everyone's using some different piece of infrastructure and all that sort of unresolved. And, some of the category solutions will also help us here. So, focus around, composability, interoperability, sort of, intent-based frameworks, all of that sort of stuff, I think needs to come and run through this system as well. But whether or not, we as sort of agent builders and agent supporters need to do that, or whether that we inherit some of those benefits, I think that's an interesting idea. Yeah, and I think the other one in particular here is, we're not building this in isolation from anyone else. And there's a whole load of other people with loads of money who are also building agent-based frameworks who also don't have the kind of category challenge that we have around connection with real world, well, say real world assets, but money, basically real money. I think, but then we have a category benefit, which is that once financial value is on chain, then that's much more suited to a kind of a machine or sort of, computer economy, if you like.
Yeah, makes sense. One of the big challenges that I see is all these agent frameworks today, they use the fundamental constructs that were built for humans. So like the payment systems, the communication systems that they use, they were all built for humans, right? So if they have to access, for example, your Coinbase account, they need an API key, right? But that's not how an agent should be communicating. So I think that's an opportunity for maybe there are developers in this room who want to sort of take this as an idea and maybe work on it as a project where how do you invent agent to agent payments, or how do you invent agent to agent communication, or how does agent access what you would traditionally access using an API key? Does the agent need to access using an API key, or could there be a better way? So yeah, if we can solve some of those problems, that would be amazing.
Yes, I think on the other hand, because we need to be a little bit positive, there are a lot of improvements on AI tools are improving quickly, and we do believe that they will play a key role on making AI agents more scalable, more flexible, and more, I hope, more widely adopted at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think just look at sort of like the DeFi ecosystem, and I think a lot of people, like the last speaker here was saying, a lot of people here are building on that because that is, has got the most interconnectors in place, right? It's got the most means of sort of creating, I guess, intangible but also tangible value for people today. So, and I think these sort of frontier ecosystems or these frontier industries are where we sort of test and where we learn, and then maybe we build out from there.
Rakesh, to your point, do we have agents capable of, I guess, illuminating or expanding on how they could best communicate agent to agent, or is that a human sourced problem of figuring out a better communication line?
I think like I have a developer background, right? And I'm used to using like API keys and storing the secrets. But then agents are really smart, right? Like they can do complex encryptions. So are the API keys the right way to build autonomous agents? Because I actually tried building one for one use case. And then I realized that I actually control the access, because at any point in time, I could revoke the API key and the agent would pretty much be dead. So we need some constructs, and I think there will be some innovation that happens in this space, which will be basically a combination of cryptographic techniques as well as human experience of how agents interact with each other. And then we'll probably build those foundational constructs that will be used for agent-to-agent communication, like what MCP has done for how we use AI today. I think there would be an equivalent for the AI agent space.
Yeah, when mobile phone networks came along, right, it didn't used to be possible to send people text messages from one phone number to another phone number across networks, right? You had to create the GSMA, which then sort of said, okay, well, this is how we send messages, right? And everyone agreed it. And I think we're kind of at that sort of stage right now. Think about, within each of these kind of islands of opportunity, if you like, that each project is building, it's great. But what we actually need is we need to enable discoverability. We need to enable findability. How I'm here and I want to do this, right? You're there and you want to do that. How does that happen? And then how do people come to trust and be able to transact? Like some of those primitives are there and some of those are sort of in development. And I think those are some of the interesting challenges which, require innovation and then require sort of a product strategy to get it to grow and get adopted.
Yeah, in the past few months, we saw a lot of new frameworks, AI frameworks like ELISA or Griffines. And I think it showed us that we will need more new standards like that to improve, and so AI agents can work across networks and ecosystem in a better way. Because today it's more difficult to change ecosystem or networks, and we will need this type of new standards to do that. Yeah.
Thank you, guys. So moving on here, from your perspective, what signals have you found that can indicate that we have a decentralized AI project that has the potential to move from experimental into like truly foundational AI here? Basically, like, what's the secret sauce to what you guys have been doing so far?
Yes. For me, the strongest signals that make an AI project more bullish than others is a great user experience. Because we have a lot of examples in this space, and that the team that stand out are the one who manage blockchains in the backend and abstract it for the user. Because if guys or users can play with an AI agent on chains without knowing anything about blockchain and without knowing anything about smart contract or wallets, that is when we see a real adoption potential at the hand. So if the AI agents or if the AI projects feel a little bit slowly and complex, for me, it won't scale, like blue chip projects. So yeah, projects need to have a clear UX and to have targets for more adoption products than a token or whatever.
I mean, thinking about how you adapt into this sort of like, frontier, like wilderness environment where not a lot of other stuff exists. I think, doesn't mean you can't do anything. And I think there are two big opportunity areas, right? One is sort of vertical integration, right? You sort of look at all the way from the infrastructure through a connection layer into applications, and you create one sort of use case that some particular type of user type will get a lot of value out of, right? And I think you can kind of just go, well, no, don't need to worry too much about everything else. I'm just going to sort of solve the needs of that user, right? And I think that's one really viable way of going to market, and that's one thing that we look for. I think the other one is thinking about horizontal integration and go, well, we're going to solve the connector layer, right? For instance, between all of these different projects, and we're going to sort of make something that's so much more usable that people, it doesn't make sense for anyone else to build it. They'll just use us, And I think, like, just to take an example from blockchains, you might go kind of like, I don't know, gasless transactions or something in blockchains, right? And sort of like, what's that version of this here? So look at horizontal or vertical integration. That's what we look for. And I guess if you're thinking about how you kind of can do something that's likely to have some longevity, I'd encourage you to think the same.
So when I'm evaluating projects in this space, I typically look at, like, first is what part of the AI stack is it, is the project trying to decentralize, right? Because that's really important. And then within that portion, are they building a real product which will add real value and has a part to being a successful product that sort of solves a particular problem, or is it just a game to build a token and basically get the value that way? For me, like, building a real product is the most important thing. And apart from that, I also look for, like, is the project just a wrapper on top of like one of the GPT models, or is it or does it have some moat? Like, the moat could be from data perspective, or could be vertically integrated for a particular sector, but there has to be some moat, because if it's just a wrapper, it's not going to be a long-term value project.
Going on this a little bit more, is there a scenario that less UX is more? And I mean that from the way of, like, does every part of the stack need a retail level, like a non-technical UX to really be there?
Can I jump in there? Yeah, I think it's a really great point, because I think one of our fundamental perspectives is that over the next few years, most users of these systems are not going to be people, right? So ultimately, in that context, like, what is the value of a front end, right? You actually have a kind of your go-to-market strategy, I suppose, needs to be made up of sort of like all the sort of like builder enablement stuff, like software development kits and all that sort of stuff. And it also, needs to be kind of focused on things like discoverability and findability by other agents and things like that. I actually think Uniswap is a really interesting example, right? Because Uniswap, the website, and Uniswap, the protocol, is a kind of a way of what we're talking about here. And actually, most transactions that happen on Uniswap do not go through the front end. What they've done is they've built this like massive set of interconnections and networks with all other DeFi applications who need to exchange assets. And that probably is where we will end up. But at the same time, how do you make this understandable by someone? How do you make this sort of, what is your marketing strategy for that? Well, it might be that you kind of create a kind of a demo application, or you create a sort of a retail version so people can get it. Maybe you don't always need that, but I think there is some value in having it.
Yeah, totally. As you said, I think autonomous agents is really challenging the way how we think about Web3 core principle, because in the past, most protocols were built for humans interacting through wallets. Now we need to design for machines interacting directly with smart contracts without permission. So it shows us that the UX is a huge thing, but the backend with the blockchains can be like smooth, and the integration and the interoperability can be like a huge things in the backend at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, I think like, you sort of have different types of experiences, right? So you have user experience, you have developer experience, and now the new thing will be the agent experience. So I think for UX, like, if you look at a lot of AI products like OpenAI, it's basically a simple text box where you enter a prompt and it does something for you. But when it comes to developer experience, right, like, there are API standards that have emerged, like concepts like MCP that have emerged, right? And then within the agent space, there will be some communication protocols and something like an agent experience, which is what will become more important than your traditional retail UI UX, in my opinion.
So let's move over to the token side here. When we're considering long-term economic creation here and viability, are there some common pitfalls that you've seen in terms of token economics coming out, things to avoid, or things that have been done really well in the space to this point?
Token model can definitely support long-term value only if it's built on top of like real utility. Because one mistake we often see in this space is design a token model complex incentive program without long-term sustainability. So for me, the priority should be is my product is useful in a way that the users want to engage with at the end. If my product isn't useful or intuitive, no token model or no token will fix that. So yeah, for me, a good token model and a good tokenomics should come after a market validation and not just for speculation. Yeah.
I mean, to build on that, I think ultimately any token anywhere, right? What you need to do is you need to balance the needs of speculators and genuine, long-term usage. And that's not to say that speculators are not important, right? Because where the capital comes from to get these projects moving is actually from speculators, right? From risk capital. But at the same time, I mean, I don't need to tell everyone here about, as those tokens get released, a lot of downward pressure comes in and sort of, how you tell your story, how you create a narrative that enables sort of long-term belief and sort of marrying that sort of new users and new buyers and as new sellers come along and creating an active and healthy market is a key part of any token, probably much more in the short term than what the transaction network charge is for the agents or any of that sort of stuff. Yeah, and I think sort of sustainable incentive structures would be one thing, and it's sort of like, and actually what we've seen, I think, over the last few months, like last year or so in this whole space, is that kind of like speculative boom come along. Look at virtuals, look at all of this stuff. We had a lot of like very sort of experimental, maybe naive kind of like stuff that comes along, most of which has now lost nearly all of its value in terms of agent tokens. And I think the market is kind of consolidating and thinking again about how you might do that. And I think probably every agent doesn't need its own token, and actually maybe some of the kind of the long-term sustainable value comes from building blocks in the network.
And to that point, really quick, it's obviously we had this huge hockey stick moment, late Q4, early Q1 of just if it had AI in the name, token went up. And it's the same people. I mean, some of the people driving this, same people buying Titcoin today. Like is that and this has only been weeks removed from that, is that already changing token models going forward, or is that just market dynamics? It's part of the game.
We're trying to build like key civilization level technology in the middle of a big casino. It's what we're doing, right? So, I mean, all of this stuff is kind of going on at the same time, and maybe the majority of those coins we all launched in like 17, 18, 21. A lot of those were meme coins, right? And then then we have meme coins, and then we had AI is interesting. Let's do that. It's kind of but there's so much interesting, foundational, like generation level genius happening here at the same time. It's just such an interesting place to be.
Yes, and about the incentive also, one other common pitfall we often see in this market is over-rewarding short-term activity without long-term sustainability, sorry. And because if people are only there for short-term yields, the system at the end can collapse when rewards dry up, and we saw a lot of example in this space for the airdrop narrative. And I think it's like a mistake or a pitfall at the end.
Yeah, I think like I'll answer the question slightly differently. So I've seen a lot of different token models. I think with agents, what I would like to see is dynamic token models. right? So you have an AI agent that's really powerful, that has capability to do a lot of complex analysis. And something that would be interesting is like, let's say a project had a dynamic token model where depending on the interactions with the agent, depending on what the agent's knowledge base is and how the users are interacting, it sort of adjusts the token model based on the current situation in the market, in the interactions, and see how that evolves. Like it could be an experiment that fails, but I would definitely want to see that experiment and see what it leads us to.
Nice. Appreciate this, guys. I've used half of my own personal questions in here, so thanks for letting me just learn alongside. I know I'm pushing us on time here a little bit, so I'm going to speed up a bit. And let's go to something I think would be fun for everyone here. Let's go, we'll hop in the DeLorean. We go 3 to 5 years ahead. What is going to generate the highest returns for investors between emerging primitives? Like we're talking agent marketplaces, autonomous DAOs, agent native L2s, to be named.
Yeah, I think for me over the next 3 or 4 years, the biggest opportunity will come from the DeFi AI space, which is a mix of DeFi and AI, with the targets to make DeFi more accessible for everyone. We saw a lot of examples already in this space, like Virtuals you mentioned earlier, AION, AXBT, some project like that. And I think there will be more and more projects in these files with higher variations than today, because the most promising returns in this space is to make DeFi more accessible for everyone, and even for non-crypto users, and make possible that an agent can manage trade, can make strategy on chain, and move assets automatically without human input at the end. So I think it's the biggest difference between DeFi and in 3 or 4 years. Yeah.
My build on that would be, you need to think mindfully about where we are right now. And I think where we are right now is sort of this kind of foundational level. And if you look at, say, when kind of crypto took off, like, you know, after Ethereum and like say 16, 17, there was a whole load of stuff that got launched then, right? You know, does anyone remember DentaCoin, the dental coin for the industry? That didn't work, right? But what did work is layer ones and exchange tokens, right? You know, keep it simple, right? People want to, you know, they want to trade. And they want to, you know, they want sort of infrastructure that's going to work. And I don't have a very clear idea about what that is in this industry right now, but that is, you know, keep it simple. That's what's going to, 3 to 5 years is a long time, but it's also not a long time, right? So, you know, I'd be thinking about identity. I'd be thinking about trust. I'd be thinking about sort of like creating frameworks that enable communication. I think about sort of like, you know, agent building, you know, developer frameworks, things like that. Like, what are the modules in our stack that we need to be able to come together? Because probably 3 to 5 years' time is the beginning of this kind of integration phase where those building blocks start getting put together.
Yeah, I think two areas where I would want to continue investing as an investor. So the first one is the infrastructure, because that's what's going to power all of the DEAI innovation. And then the second one would be the agentic frameworks or platforms that sort of bring together all these different capabilities, from communication to payments to everything else together under a single umbrella, so that enterprises and retail users can build powerful agents on top of those platforms. So I think those two would be great investment areas.
Appreciate everyone's time. I think we're good. Thanks, everyone.